Mountain biker, mountain runner and adventurist Trahan Chidley shares her very personal and traumatic story of surviving domestic abuse and how sport gave her the strength and confidence to take control of her life. It's a story I've desperately wanted to tell for a while, but it's also one of the hardest things I've ever done. I've realized as a coping mechanism I've blocked out a lot of what happened as it's too painful to think about. But I'll share what I can, because I want to help people who are in a similar situation to see the light and seek help. Growing up, I was always happy, calm, sensitive and caring towards everyone and everything. During my first long-term relationship, which started at the age of 17, the girl everyone knew and loved slowly faded away. I had become a victim of domestic abuse. I've always seen the best in people, and even when it's near impossible to see, I look for it and do my best to help them. I guess this is why I initially stayed with X, and throughout this story he will simply be referred to as X. Before I knew it, he'd whittled me down with constant and harsh emotional abuse. X put me down at any opportunity he could, and the more people to hear it, the better. He would call me fat, ugly, mock my job, disrespect my family, and remind me how lucky I am to have him. No one else would have, or put up with me. No one else could ever love me like he did. At first, I laughed off the remarks, but being so constant and never cushioned with a compliment, it slowly began to tear me apart. I guess the first sign of any physical abuse was in the early stages of the relationship. X liked to play games, one of which was where he'd bite me, mainly on my arms, so hard that more often than not it drew blood. Each bite mark left huge bruises, and I don't bruise easily. He'd be laughing hysterically as the tears rolled down my cheeks. His mood would suddenly change, and he'd get annoyed with me for being so miserable and not having fun. Another of his fun games was him pinning me down on the bed, and while hysterically laughing, he spat on me, watching me try and avoid the spit. He was a strong guy, and no matter how hard I tried to free from his tight grip, I couldn't. Again, he'd only stop when he got bored and just have a go at me for being so miserable, and tell me to lighten up. I remember going to college and trying to hide the bruises. My friends questioned it, and I ended up getting good at hiding the truth and almost convincing myself that it was all a bit of fun. As the years passed, I became more and more of a shadow to the girl everyone knew. He controlled everything I did. I had to ring him immediately every time I arrived somewhere. I had to answer the phone quickly whenever he called. I stopped running, he didn't like my family, and tried to turn my friends against me. He told my best friend, who's also my auntie but only 1 year older than me, so we're pretty much raised like sisters, things I'd apparently said about her, and then tell me she'd bitched about me. I was crushed by what she'd apparently said, but we never confronted each other, which kept his secret powerful, and for a while, for the first time in our lives, it put a barrier between us. I was never allowed to visit my friends at uni. I know you might think, of course you're allowed, just do what you want. It wasn't that easy, and definitely not worth the verbal abuse, jealousy and accusations. You never know how you'll react when you're put in that situation, and you certainly don't see it coming. He'd broken me down. I was constantly on edge, thinking first about everything I said or did. After 3 years together, numerous things happened, and my family, who never liked him but didn't want to push me away, finally had to ban him from the house. Too scared to break up with him, we moved in together. Up until this point, I had no idea what he was capable of. I thought he had insecurity issues I could help him with, but things just got worse. It hadn't even been a month in our new house, and all of a sudden, completely out of the blue, he kicked off. He grabbed my orange juice from the side of the bed, poured it over my head. hit my head with the glass, then smashed it against the wall, causing it to shatter everywhere and splinter into the wall. He dragged me down the stairs by my hair, grabbed my jaw, and didn't let go for what felt like a lifetime. After that, it's all a blur. Nothing was really said. I was in shock and believed he was too. For the next few weeks my ears were black and blue, my jaw was in agony, and I couldn't open my mouth wide enough to eat properly. I tried hiding my ears, and the dent and shattered glass marks on the wall too. At the time, I thought this was a one-off reaction, and it wouldn't happen again. I didn't and still don't know what triggered him. We lived together for 2 years, and I lost count of how many times he physically abused me. I thought he was losing control and didn't know what he was doing, but not once did he touch my face, and so it remained a secret. It's only recently that I've learned how controlled he actually was, and how insanely predictable his behaviour was too. People have literally written step-by-step books of a perpetrator's actions, and they mirror his. Alcohol was never to blame, as he attacked me when he was stone-cold sober too. It was just more inevitable it would happen when he'd had a few drinks. It was always my fault, he told me. I had it coming, and sometimes he blamed my parents. I was constantly walking on eggshells, trying not to set him off. I also tried to protect my family from him. Conversations regularly got heated, and I did everything I could to get them away from X before he switched. On one occasion, this really upset my auntie. She wanted to go outside and reason with him, but I wouldn't let her. She didn't know that I stopped her because I was scared at what he might do, so she became annoyed with me too. After living together for a year and being together for 4 years, I was severely unhappy, scared, trapped and alone, feeling unable to share my situation with anyone. He'd used my name to purchase several items on finance, found my emergency credit card and used it. With him being unemployed half the time, I had to work as many jobs and hours I could to make sure they were being paid off. And I was still expected to give him money before entering the pub, so it looked like he paid for everything. Countless times I'd come home from work, 12+ hours, stuck inside while it had been a beautiful day. I'd come home to X lying on the sofa, curtains drawn, tens of empty crisp packets surrounding him and multiple DVD cases everywhere, and then I'd be asked when I walked through the door at 8 or 9 p.m, "What's for tea?" I thought I was protecting everyone else by not telling them. Knowing I was unhappy, I still convinced myself that I could live the rest of my life like this, not knowing a way out, feeling this was the best option for everyone. I'd stay with him to protect the ones I loved and keep them from ever knowing what was really happening. I felt extremely alone, and for a while the only friend I felt I could be myself with, showing my sadness and vulnerability, was my little dog Chester. However, there became a turning point in the relationship. Just after we moved house again, X had a good friend. We hung out a lot, and I got on with him like a house on fire, with a lot in common. X always accused me of wanting to be with him, which fueled a lot of attacks, but I never saw him that way. X would be suffocating me with a pillow whilst the friend was sleeping on the sofa in the next room, trying to get me to scream so the friend would come running in. But I never did, thinking I was protecting him. One day, this friend told me how much he liked me, and I didn't deserve to be treated the way I was. All he'd seen was the emotional abuse and verbal attacks I constantly received. We became closer, and for the first time in years, someone other than my parents gave me compliments. It was a shock, and I didn't really know how to handle it. But it opened my eyes to what I could have, what I should have. Someone who really loved me and made me feel special. Meanwhile, my brother was living the dream in Canada. I've always been close to him, and even though he's younger than me, I've always looked up to him. Growing up, he always raced bikes. He got his first motocross bike aged 4, and started racing at the age of 6. At the age of 12, he started downhill mountain biking too. After a few years competing in both, he had to choose just one, so he went with downhill mountain biking. I supported him with my family at every single race. He had his biking, I had my music. I played the piano, flugelhorn, and any other instrument I attempted, but it never occurred to me that I could be any good at biking too. Seeing the life my brother lived and how happy he was hit me. I could have that too. I deserved that. He's been an inspiration to me. My brother knew I was unhappy. I hadn't been the sister he knew for years now. He told me to borrow Dad's bike and go out riding with his friends. So that's what I did. A complete novice, grabbing Dad's hardtail with SPD pedals, I grabbed my skater shoes, not even a close match for the pedals, and off I went for my first ride with my new biking friend. I was awful. My butt hurt, I fell off lots, bashed my shins to pieces, but I smiled the whole time. I loved it. It gave me a sense of freedom and control which I had been deprived of for years. Even though he was in Canada, I felt close to him when I rode. I wanted to make him proud. I wanted to make myself proud. I lost count of the amounts of nights I lay awake staring at a picture of myself as a child, crying, saying sorry, and feeling devastated at how I'd let that baby down by letting X treat me the way he did. X came out riding once and didn't bother again. It was too much hard work for him. I also lost count of the amount of jobs he lost because he didn't like being told what to do. He never took my biking seriously, just laughed at me. Thankfully, that attitude allowed me to be persistent on the bike, and I quickly started to improve. I started running again, but didn't tell X. I also saw my family every day, but tried to keep it from him. I paid the price with both physical and verbal attacks if I was caught. I could feel myself getting stronger, more confident and determined. I loved being outside. I felt safe, even with the risk of crashing into a tree. I didn't have to hide or prove anything. It was just me and the great outdoors, the fresh air working in harmony with the rawness of nature. It might sound cheesy and a bit hippie-like, but being outside comforts me. Whether it's in harsh winter conditions or the middle of summer, I'm simply content. I love the social life biking started to bring back into my life. People of all ages, abilities and backgrounds become connected and form an amazing bond through biking. I started leading a double life, and it slowly pieced me together again. No one ever knew the extent of the abuse. Everyone knew he had violent traits, but hadn't even dreamt he was violent towards me. Mum worked with children and was delivering courses to professionals on how domestic abuse affects children. She had come home with leaflets and had me read them. X showed all the signs of a perpetrator, and she was warning me of the type of person he could become, having no idea he'd already become that person. At this point I knew I wanted out. I was just trying to gain the strength. X knew I'd gotten stronger. Every time he attacked me, I didn't care. I started to challenge him, and he didn't like that. He got worse, but I still didn't care. So he started to hit me where it hurt, and threatened to hurt my family. He graphically described how he'd kill my dogs, burn the house down, or slit Dad's throat in his sleep. This terrified me more than anything. I genuinely feared for their lives. I thought he was going to kill me countless times, so I thought he wouldn't think twice about killing my family, whom he didn't like. This trapped me with him for a few more months. In August 2009, my brother was home from Canada and was due to start uni in a couple of weeks. I felt stronger when he was around. If I was going to break up with X, it needed to be now. I told him I didn't want to be with him, and he broke down. He said he'd change and to give him a chance. I knew he couldn't change. The damage was already done. I hadn't loved him for a long time and needed out. I gave him a 2-week trial and slowly started moving my stuff back to my parents. I knew it would be a messy breakup, and I'd leave with nothing and never want to go back. So I just waited for him to kick off. I can't remember how I diverted him from my parents, but the next day I broke up with him for good. We spoke for 6 hours until he stormed off to the pub. I saw that as a good opportunity to pack and leave. Then my best friend, my auntie, called and asked if I was okay. She said X had just left the pub and he didn't seem right. I told her I'd broken up with him and started crying. She said she was coming down to see me right away. Just as I hung up, X came bursting through the door. He threw the suitcase across the room, breaking it, then chased me into the kitchen. I was backed into the corner as he grabbed the kitchen knife, holding it at my throat, shouting at me. He kept shouting, and through all of the attacks, I'd never seen him look so serious, so threatening, so deadly. I thought that was it. And then the door knocked. Literally saved by the bell, my best friend was here to make sure I was okay. It snapped X out of what he was doing. Although she didn't know it, she saved my life that day. I told him she'd come to make sure I was okay, and not in a million years did she think she'd be saving my life. He shouted at her to go away, but she wouldn't leave till she saw me. He ran out and slammed the living room door behind him. This door was broken and never closed, so he'd basically locked me in the kitchen. He was trying to get rid of her, but she refused to leave until she saw me. I was panicking like mad. She was stood at the front door, which meant behind her were 15 to 20 concrete steps. I feared for her life, picturing him pushing her down the stairs. I took a step back and charged into the living room door and burst it open. My shoulder hurt for the next few days, but it had to be done. My best friend ran past X and into my arms. She held me so tightly I was crying and whispering to her that I was okay and she should go. Once she was sure he'd calmed down, she left. X and I sat there in silence for a few hours, until I finally left. I believe for the first time he actually lost control and scared himself. I wish that was the end, but he stayed living in the flat, which was 1/2 mile from my parents, surrounded by my friends and family. He continued to hang out with my family and friends. It was still a secret how he treated me, so now everyone was feeling sorry for him. He was trying to show people he'd changed, so they'd report back to me, and I'd give him another chance. I hung out with my friends a lot less because he was there too. So I carried on biking and soon had a completely new life with friends that never even knew him. Biking and my biking friends became my new life, my escape, my light. This blogcast is a Wisp Sports Radio exclusive production. The narrator was Chris Stafford. For more conversations around the world of women's sports, visit wispsports.com. where you'll find blogcasts, podcasts, videos, articles, blogs, and news. You can also subscribe to Wisp Sports Radio on iTunes.